Hello everyone, my name is Roman. It's great to see everybody here this Saturday afternoon. It's really lovely outside, so you're sacrificing some kind of weather, but I hope this time would worthwhile. And we still have a couple of people returning from the break. And currently I'm building an app and I'm about to release it. And previously I worked in different products across SaaS, web, and mobile as well. So I have quite a bit of experience and I'm really excited to share this experience with you today. What we're going to be talking about. So essentially, if I'm too loud, by the way, let me know. Essentially, we have 3 things for this presentation and for this part of the workshop. Quite a dozen people here in the room raised your hand and you said you have an idea. So I would assume that some of you don't have a good idea to build a product. You just want to build something and get this great and interesting experience. So on the first part of this presentation, I will give you quite a few practical approaches that you can use for your benefit to generate tons of interesting ideas that you like. And liking the idea is quite essential, because if you build something that you don't like, over time your motivation goes down and you're staring at the ceiling and wondering what I'm doing and why I'm spending all my money for it and time and attention and curiosity. So liking idea is great. Number 2, I'll give you a good idea and approaches to identify if your idea would worthwhile, right? If some of the people would use this idea and get value out of it. So there are a few methods that I would encourage you to use that would save you a ton of time and money and nerves, I guess. List of features. So with this part of the presentation, I would give you a few things to understand about minimum viable product and why it's essential to save your time and money and to gain a validated learning on each step of the process. Not to bet everything and spend a ton of time and then see how people don't use it. So these are 3 essential things for this part of the workshop. And also hopefully we'll still have some time for questions. Okay, there are quite a few interesting approaches that I would like to share. First one is to create a list of personal and sometimes professional frustrations and problems that you can have. And on this a few slides, I wanted to share a few problems that I created myself, and I had a list of about hundreds of those after a month of this exercise. So I'm a pretty active young person and professional, so I used to work in downtown San Francisco and spend a lot of time in the office and go to the bars and nightclubs as well, and that's why I wish sometimes I can have a time in the quiet place to have a nap. And some of the companies, they even offer you a nap room if you don't know. And another part of this exercise, you're writing down the problems and frustrations, but you think about a solution just a little bit. You think about, like, if you had a magic wand, what kind of solutions would you have for that? If I had a magic wand, I would need to see a bunch of places within downtown in walking distance and understand which one of those places are available and clean right now, right for me. And that can be an app or something else. You don't go into the details of the solution right at this point, and you don't even think about how it can be created. Number 2, well, once I heard from a friend that there was a deal with a Chase Bank and you can get a lot of miles for free. And I got these miles, and I flew to Alaska, and I flew to Hawaii as well. So round-trip tickets were free for me, pretty much. I spent some money, and that was cool. And then I figured, if I didn't have this conversation with a friend, there is no other way I would know about this potential deal, right? And all these banks and different airlines, they offer these deals and their short-term promotions. Then you have to consistently search for it and then look for it. So it would be nice for me to be aware of all these deals that are coming up and which one is the best and compare everything. Number 3. I traveled quite a bit recently throughout the US, and I visited some of the new cities that I've never been to. And it would be really interesting to walk around with understanding if it's a dangerous or sketchy area to show up after midnight, let's say. And then being alerted, let's say, with the phone because you carry it with you all the time. So as you can see, once I'm writing down all these frustrations and problems, some of the solutions, they crop up already. And you don't jump into solutions trying to work how it was supposed to work. Just focus on the problem and try to figure out if it's an actual problem of yours. just now before, for an example, when I was working at the startup company, it's like all craziness going on around you, and if you're a product manager, pretty much all 8 different teams that you're working with, they would like to steal some of your time. While you can set up a status on your Skype or Slack that you're busy right now, people tend to come over, especially in America, it's quite common. They like personal attention and conversations. They tend to come over and distract you from the actual work that matters. And for me, just an example of the solution that would be really nice to visualize how busy I am so that people don't really intrude and in my workflow, pretty much. So this is the first approach. It's really fun part of it. And I'm sure like all of you have these problems and frustrations in everyday life that if you start paying attention, it gets quite interesting. Number 2, you take the greatest idea on the market that everybody heard of, and then you try to apply it into different market or different context. Everybody heard of Uber, I guess. There is Uber of everything. So now it gets a lot of attention of investors. It's pretty much its economy on demand that would allow you to get the service and save a lot of time. So now we have Uber for vets, Uber for wallet parking, doctors, alcohol, weed delivery. It can be anything. It can be private jets. And those are all existing ideas, by the way. So they do exist. And I wanted to highlight here on this slide that some of these ideas and companies, they're quite successful. Some of them are not. And what matters here is not an idea as itself. Like some people were asking questions about NDA and all that. To be honest, it doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the execution and the team and experience and the processes they use and the resources that they pick. So a lot of things matters, but not actual idea. Idea is nothing. You can share it with everybody. Like people, they tend to keep it for themselves and don't say that much, but everyone can have an idea. And after a couple of more approaches, you would understand that you can come up with hundreds of ideas in a week. Oh, that's the fun one. Anybody use Tinder in the room? No? Seriously? It's a private. Okay, too private? Okay, nobody wants to see that. Okay. Okay, you use Tinder. Are you married? Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. All right, I'm Roman and I use Tinder. I used it before, to be honest. So what's interesting example about this app, right? The approach itself, you take one of the best apps, one of the most popular apps, and you're trying to identify the gaps or something that user would wish for within this app that it doesn't provide. If you look for Tinder somewhere on App Annie or App Store, you would see like 50 or 100 different apps that were built around this app. Like Tinder, after a year they launched, they had 13 million daily users. It's a lot. And there is a lot for other ideas to get. So currently, let's say, okay, nobody used it before, right? So I'll tell you a little bit. You sync your Facebook profile with the app, and then after that, you have to select 5 pictures that you would like to represent yourself, so you look good. And then you write down just a couple of sentences saying how good you are, even better than you look. And then pretty much you swipe left, swipe right, and you get swipe back, and then you get to message this person who likes you back. So all these apps, they were trying to solve a few sort of customer pains. There was a flirty keyboard that helps you create different flirty smiles, and then they help you come up with the pickup lines, they help you optimize your images, they help you optimize the description, and those are all separate apps. And also, it's only like one swipe at a time. And like what people do, okay, what I did. You can swipe pretty much until you reach the limit, and then just wait when you get swiped back, so you can just spend your time and attention to message the person, not just reviewing all the pictures. And then quite a few apps that were built around bulk swiping, so you can swipe, and then all the swipes go. And then pretty much all of this emerged, all of these sort of frustrations, they emerged into these ideas and potential products. Also, they have Tinder and Grindr. Those are really interesting apps as well, but I wouldn't go into details of this app. We have kids in the audience here. So how these ideas emerged, right? We had some of the features of the app. Swiping one by one, it's time consuming. However, Tinder solved quite a few problems with this swiping. let's say if you attractive girl and pretty much you can get hundreds of messages every day, so you wouldn't respond. And then if you're a guy who's trying to send hundreds of messages to attractive girl, you wouldn't get a response because she's getting too many. And this is how they solve this problem by disabling you from messaging the person who didn't like you back. Okay, and then finding the best pictures for the profile, it's a headache as well. Writing profile description, having to think about pickup lines. So all these apps, they exist to make your life easier. Life, I mean, using of Tinder. So this is a good trend. Okay, that's my favorite one. Giving your attention to the latest technology trends is really essential. What I'm seeing, I think the drones, they're pretty much really popular. They're becoming more and more popular nowadays, and a lot of different technologies apply, and a lot of startups emerged and ideas. And also, I've noticed there were a couple of venture capital funds allocated specifically for weed delivery. And there is some movement going on. Oh, kids here, sorry. And there are some movements going on in different laws in the country in different states as well. So if you have trendy idea, it's nice, right? Weed delivery with drones. There is a good upside and one downside of it. So upside of it, you might get some attention from investors if you have an idea to go somewhere big and get good investments and get a lot of money. However, a lot of people, they can see the trends and observe them, so you should anticipate some competition here. What else? Some of the trends, I think, solar energy is still trendy, and Elon Musk is making it more trendy, so we can add a solar panel to it. So now it's a solar-powered drone, which is even more trendy, right? And some of you probably heard about the blockchain technology. It's technology that Bitcoins were based on, and a lot of startups emerged in here. It's the most secure technology to save your data, and nobody hacked Bitcoins yet. That's why some of the applications can be done with this. So our solar-powered drone with delivery would accept Bitcoins as well. Why not? So now we have really, really trendy idea. We can go to the market, right? And fight all the competitors. Okay, and last one but not the least one is IFTTT and Craigslist. It's like a gold mine of ideas. Have you heard of IFTTT, or should I give a definition? Okay, not all of you. So it stands for if this, then that. Pretty much is a platform that would allow you to create different interaction patterns between software, pretty much applications, and hardware. Let's say my favorite IFTTT recipe is when one of the popular apps on the App Store becomes free, I'll get an email notification for that. So you can go check it out for free. And there's a lot of different applications for IFTTT. Let's say if you go home, if you come home, the lights turns on automatically. And the way you can use it for generating ideas, you can see the most popular IFTTT recipes, and then you can observe what are the most common and natural patterns of people to interact with different pieces of software. And this is how you can come up with a product idea. And Craigslist, there are a lot of different examples how people used it to create their idea to steal users or trying to create something interesting. Let's say, for example, I haven't seen the company that provides you a ride from the city to another city. Let's say I want to go from San Francisco to LA, but I haven't found the company that can provide me that. And there is some group on Craigslist, and they still do it. And then there was a company, it's called Airbnb. I guess some of you know it, right? They pretty much created something similar, and they were getting a lot of users from Craigslist as well. I'll tell this story a bit later. So it's pretty much the gold mine of ideas that you can use to your advantage. And those are four or five different approaches that you can use. So coming up with an idea is not that difficult. As long as you know the right approach, it's a lot of fun. OK, this is what your idea looks like from the very beginning. It's nothing, as I said. It's really fragile, transparent. You can defend it. You cannot really defend it, right? You come up with an idea. You go to your friend. You speak about it. And your friend would be, it exists. You don't really need it anymore. Like, how would you build it? Or you have like 15 different competitors. and it's already taken, the market is divided, don't build it. Well, that's a common conversation that you would have. And I had a few conversations like this. But however, over time, once you do a lot more different researches about the idea, you start building the arguments, you start building the facts, and your opinion becomes stronger about the idea. And there's two major forces that can impact your opinion about the idea. One is people. So it's either your friends or experts on the market or people who have the same problem that you're trying to solve with your idea. So the third people, those are the most important people that you would like to listen to. Your friends, not that much, because they would care to save the friendship sometimes. Sometimes they would care to ruin your idea just for fun. And pretty much people have different opinions in different time. It depends on the mood. It depends on a lot of factors. So I wouldn't put a big stake on that. And another force pretty much that shapes your idea is the market reality. This one is more interesting. And this one allows you to take control of the process and gain as much information as you can so that you can make sure that your idea fits well into the market and you have higher chance for success. Market validation. What is market validation? Market validation is the process that would allow you to understand if people actually need your product before you actually build or launch your product. And this is really interesting because market validation can be different for each of the ideas. We have like 4 pretty much common approaches. There are more of them, but I would focus on 4 of them. And if you understand how to apply it, it can save you a ton of money and time. That's why it's important. OK, so these 4 different approaches that I would like you to focus on here in terms of market validation. And closer to the end of this presentation, I'll give you some of the examples of well-known companies how they've done it. One is surveys. Pretty much you can, with understanding of your target audience, you can ask them a lot of open questions like how they solve similar problem and what kind of frustrations they have about the solutions they use. And pretty much you construct a good survey in Google Forms or somewhere in SurveyMonkey. Those are tools that you can use that are most efficient. And then you get their opinion, and you're trying to understand if they would actually use it or buy it. I'm not a big fan of this method. I prefer 3 others, but still people use it. It's quite popular. Landing page. Who knows what is landing page? Nice. All smart people. Landing page. It's a website, really simple website that you can create with all the tools available, like LaunchRocket and others. You can spend a couple hours and build it like this. Or if you don't have any experience with HTML, pretty much you can go to Upwork. I'll go to see me. I'll give you a couple of developers. And have $100 and build landing page just like this. Pretty much landing page allows you to post your value proposition that you think your product will provide, and then monitor the traffic. Let's say if you track it with Google Analytics and you see how people search for something that you're trying to sell, and how many of them actually convert and leave their email. This is how you just get emails and you say, OK, leave your email, and I'll email you back once the product is released. So without actually having a product, you're trying to understand who would be interested in the idea that you want to develop into a piece of software. So it's quite powerful as well. It's something I've done a few times. And you just get a better understanding of the target audience who is actually interested and how to track this. Prototype reviews, something interesting. So on the third part of this workshop, Alex would be showing you how to create some elementary prototype with proto.io. With prototype like this, you can go out there and talk not to your friends, talk to people who have similar problem that you're trying to address, and ask a lot of interesting questions like, we'll go into details with this later, but you'll be asking questions like, how do you solve this problem? Would you use this product? How would you use it? What do you think? It's a lot of nothing like implied, and you say pretty much to set expectations like, oh, I've built it within a couple of days. It's not a big deal. It can be changed 100%. So people don't really worry about offending you or trying to say the feedback you don't want to hear. And number 4, I think the most interesting one is competitive research. In this part of presentation, I'll tell you on example, which is pretty good visualizing the reality of it. And on example of my app that I'm trying to release right now, this is under review. Okay, so these 2 things, I think this is more interesting to go over because landing page is you just build it and you watch it. Service, pretty much fine, but this 2 is more interesting. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I started out with an interesting idea. Let's call it set of rules. A couple years consistently, I was trying to run a marathon, and it didn't happen. So it didn't mean that I was slow or something, or I wasn't consistent in the training. I just couldn't do it. Like, I ran 15 miles, and that was it. And then I've learned that there was a guy who ran the marathon in 2011 in Canada, and he was I think, yeah, he was 100 years old. I was like, I'm 27, this guy's 100. So I figured I was doing something wrong, right? So this is how I started thinking about the problem. And on the other hand, I've noticed there is so many lousy ideas and information that just wastes your time on the internet. And then I figured, if I have a long-term goal, how would I pretty much achieve it with all this information in the internet flying around? And my first initial idea was to just create a scientifically proven set of rules that would allow you, if you get it, that will allow you to achieve long-term goal. That was just idea before the research, before the prototype reviews. So I started doing the research, the prototype reviews, and I ended up having an idea. It's a habit development app that has a methodology that is called if-then planning that was proven in over 100 studies. So, and we will go over how I got from this point to this point. Okay, prototype reviews. So you need to find, let's say, 15 or 20 different people and set a conversation with them. It would be good on this stage to have a prototype to show, at least something minimal, something that can give them an idea what this is and what kind of pain it would solve for them. And also interesting is to see them interact with it and what they would naturally want to do. And also you ask them about their current problem, or you tell them what you're trying to solve to make sure that they have similar problem as well. And then pretty much you ask them how they solve it, is it a good solution or not, or what they like about it, what they don't like about it. So it's a ton of information that you structure over time, and if there is any overlapping, pretty much you pay more attention to it. So it's 15 to 20 conversations that can shape your idea dramatically from this point. And also, last but not least point here is you can get people to like your idea easily. Like, you can be really persuasive and say that your idea is great and all these metaphors and everything, and people are like, yes, your idea is great. But then it's really important to gauge the willingness to buy. Liking an idea and buying the product, those are 2 different things. Those are 2 different decisions that people make. Competitive research. So we have, that was a question over there about competitive research, so we can now go with details. We do competitive research for the MVP offering as well, because I've done quite a few. Competitive research is important, and you'll understand why after this part of the presentation. Who your competitors are. I can pretty much talk a lot about it, about the theory and all that, but I'll give you an actual example how I've done it with Habit Loop app. So there were a few competitors, let's say 4 competitors, and they were all quite well established. And when you start doing this research, and also a few of your friends, they might bring up some of the competitors that you already have, which is quite frustrating. You'd be like, oh, that was my idea. And they've built it already. And then I had a friend before, and he was trying to build an app for truck drivers. And when he started building an app 2 years ago, he had 15 different competitors. He was like, oh, interesting, I have 15 different competitors. And he started doing a lot of research for these competitors, all these different features, what is good, what is bad, and talking to customers. He started hanging out with truck drivers as well. That was a fun part for him. And after 2 years, he became #1 on the market. He built the best app on the market, and he raised $20 million. So now it's a lot of fun for him. So that's why I don't want you to be discouraged if you all of a sudden discover that it's like 50 competitors on the market. You should be excited, because that means there is a market. That means there is a problem, and this problem is being solved with a piece of software that you can potentially build or improve. You pretty much competing with the execution powers and some of the good ideas that you can build on top of it. Okay, and also, okay, I got 4 competitors, and I got 20 more. So it was quite extensive research, and it was quite difficult to research and took time. However, it pays out over time, pretty much. So who they were, I was trying to understand how long ago they were built, and this all information is easy to find pretty much at this level, and how many users they had, and like whom I'm fighting against. Is there like big teams or just independent developers that like what they're doing and they're trying to develop it themselves? What business model they had? Pretty much 80% of my competitors were not free. You just get some of the free features, but some of them were not. And those are the prices I found. Let's say, and Coach.me, they pivoted into different model, and they created a marketplace. So they decided, so previous model didn't work for them that well. At this point, I started having an understanding that my app would not be free, because my app would be better, and pretty much having it for free is a better idea. And some of you might be tempted to say, okay, I want to build something and have it free because I want to get more users. But it can be an interesting misconception, because if you're setting the price for particular software, it might mean for a lot of people that it's worth it, right? They would buy it. And if they buy it, if they invest some amount of money, I think coffee at Starbucks worth more, right? But they invest something because it's different type of decision. And they try harder to make it work for them. And also, you just cut out those people who wouldn't care about your product, and you'll end up having less frustrated comments on the App Store. So that's why I would not recommend you to build a free product. It's your time, it's a lot of efforts, and it's quite a bit of money. Okay. Also, so you figure out the business model, what it's going to be like. And also, some of you might think, because I've heard some of the beginning entrepreneurs, they think, okay, I'll build an app and I'll monetize it with ads. That's what I do. Well, people do that sometimes. However, it would work only at a large scale. When you have millions of users, only at this point you have to think about monetizing with ads. Before that, it's a bad idea. Funding and traction. So this is where you feel like you need to bite your nails, because some of them, they have a lot of money, some of them, they have a lot of users, and you'll be like, oh, they have 4 million users and 3.6 million. But on the other hand, that means somebody invested in them. That means somebody has an interest. That means investors have an interest. And if you have a huge plans of going out there and speaking to investors once you get some traction after a couple of years, that would mean there will be people to talk about it. And for them, it would be more interesting, because they would see that other investors, some of them winning, some of them not. These numbers are not actual. Like, some of them are, because it's like research. Feature sets. This is something interesting, because, well, at some point, you might not want to replicate something that exists. However, there's another side of this. And people who are trying to solve their problem, let's say this particular problem, developing the habit, they already have an expectations. They used a couple of products that didn't work for them, maybe, right? And most of them, they have similar main features, pretty much. And I would highly recommend to identify those main features. I would call them mandatory features, and then consider building them as well. At least consider them for the minimum viable product to see how your first customers would interact with it. let's say what we have here. So most of the competitors, they would allow you to create habit, schedule the habit, or select the habit instead of creating it, and track the progress. That's pretty much it. And the only difference the coach.me has is select the coach, but they're different on the market, right? They're just really big at something to look at, and then to figure out how to get more users from them. Competitive advantages. Those apps that you're pretty much scrutinizing and trying to understand what's out there within this app that 500,000 users like. Pretty much, you go through all the reviews. You're trying to keep a notes of the things that you like yourself, and you're trying to understand what is it about this app that I can steal for mine. That's the best part. Let's say some of them, they're earlier in the market. Some of them have great user experience. Some of them have clean UI and a nice look and feel that you can actually take a screenshot of and then save it. And then when you think about how you position your features on every screen in the workflow, you might look at that to spark some of the thoughts. And also here is like Coach Marketplace. It's something that I wouldn't start building without having 3.6 million as they had. Okay, weaknesses. It's really important as well to identify weaknesses, because it's something that you can turn for yourself as a strength. And some of them, most of them, they don't tell you what to do, and they don't have any methodology behind it. So how to do it and what to do, they don't tell you. And this is why after pretty much this part of analysis, I decided to dig deeper into different habit formation research papers. Those are official papers from different countries, and I stopped only when I found one of the best methodologies that I can actually package into the app, and also it would be a much stronger positioning on the market, and this is how you find your competitive advantage, right? Okay, and this is what became with the idea. So it was idea set of rules, but then I figured, okay, I have set of rules, and how do I use it, and how do I make people to use it? And I figured that developing a habit of doing something really, really useful to achieve the long-term goal is a good idea. And that's why I started researching the market, and I figured that most of them have freemium business model, and I would have the same. I would experiment with the pricing a little bit, but I would have the same. And also, I have some of the estimate based on the time on the market for my competitors and how much time they spend and how many users they have. I would say, okay, within the first year, with all my marketing luck and plans, I might get 300K users. And those are the must-have features. Those are from feature analysis. Select, create, schedule, and track the habits. Also, I got some of the user journey ideas, because if you look at the app one by one, you start getting a sense of where it starts. They log in, they create a habit, or select a habit, they schedule it, and they come back, they track it, they hit OK, they've done something. So pretty much user journey ideas are there. Those are the high-level things. And then in terms of positioning and competitive advantage, now I found this interesting methodology that I would use, and hopefully I'll make it work for other people. So that's why conducting research like this, it answers the many questions that you would like answers to. A list of features. This is the process, quite complicated, I guess. We have 2 major steps. One, we come up with pool of features. Okay, we prioritize, it's kind of middle step. And then we come up with the MVP, minimum viable product. Pool of features it can be pretty big. You can build anything. You can come up with 100 features and trying to understand which ones to put. And that's a big question we'll try to answer today. Okay. So we have basic features, and we might have a ton of ideas for Brainstorm Session, right? Or from the Brainstorm Session. So basic features, I guess we would include here things that we found already from our competitors. So it's pretty much create, schedule, select, and track. Those are the basics that I would consider to include. So we keep consistent user journey that people got used to already, so that they download your app and they already understand what they need to do in order to succeed. and brainstorm session. Well, for the brainstorming session, I would recommend you to get as many people as possible in the room, get some pizza and beers, and set some time, like 3 or 4 hours, and get any ideas that you need. Pretty much, it's going to be a big list of ideas, and those are all to the point, pretty much. Well, it would seem a bit chaotic at the end of the brainstorm session, but the more ideas you have, the more ideas you extract from the people around you, the better. Well, to structure all this chaos, you would need a few interesting approaches, and let's try to figure out how do we try to streamline it. There are multiple approaches to that. You can just Google it. It's like 50 of them, but I'm a fan of 2, and I'll tell you about one. So the first one I wouldn't tell you is if you care about money that much. Let's say it's your personal savings and you have fixed budget for something. I would take this into account when I prioritize features. Let's say you have your first list of features, and if you want to try to understand what you want to build, price for building it and time would be quite sufficient factor. But this analysis, it takes into account and focuses on mostly your target audience opinion. That's why I would recommend this one. So, okay, K-NA analysis, what it is. My main goal is to understand which feature goes to which type. So there are 3 types. One, we call it mandatory. It's something that you would include anyway. It's something that is expected by the client, and they would open your app, and if they don't see it, they'll be like, what would I do with it? So those are mandatory features. Linear features. This kind of features, the more you have them within your product, the better for your user. This is this type of feature. And exciters. Exciters pretty much, if you don't see it, you wouldn't notice it. But if you have it in the product, you'd be like, whoa, cool, they have it in the product, nice. So these are 3 types that you would be, and you have this big pool of ideas that you would break down into these 3 types. Okay, to break it down, there are 2 question types. One is called functional, and the other is dysfunctional. I think it's pretty much self-explanatory, but I'll give you an example with what I've done. For instance, I had an idea to have a mood tracker functionality integrated into the app, and then to see like how people feel and would it somehow impact their performance. And that was the idea. And how would I check? Let's say in the functional question, I would ask them, if a habit development app could track your mood, how would you feel? And I'll ask them the opposite question as well. If it could not track your mood, how would you feel? And those are 5 answers that they can get you. Let's say we have our target audience person. He said, oh yeah, I would like it if the app would have this particular functionality. And then if they ask them this functional question, they would say, well, I'm still going to be OK with that. It's going to be fine. If it's not there, it's OK. I would still use a product. Right? So we got 2 responses for 2 questions. And this table would help you to pretty much identify the type of the feature that you have. Let's say, coming back to our question, functional. Would you like having it? Yes, I would like it. Dysfunctional, what if it's not there? Well, I could live with it. So it's E. E, that means it's exciter, right? If you don't have it, you're fine. If you have it, well, it's cool. You have it. Pretty much what matters to you here is mandatory, linear, and exciter. Reverse, indifferent, questionable is something that you throw away. Or you just keep it in the backlog somewhere, and you think about it as a hypothesis that you can potentially test in the future, in the long future, I guess. So this is what works for me. And as a result of my K-NA analysis for the app, because we saw all this pool of ideas and features, there are too many of them. Let's say I keep the mandatory as I found them on competitive analysis, and I didn't find any other mandatory features when asking this question. So it's create a habit, then set the reminder, check the progress chart, and complete the habit. Those are 4 things. And also was select the habit, I guess. Then a couple of exciters. Share the habit with a friend, learn more about the habit, edit the habit, and pause the habit. Those are things that if you don't have it, it's fine. If you have it, wow, it's really cool. And linear features. Habit ideas, idea rates, and idea reviews. The more habit ideas you can provide to the user, the better. And the more rates it have, the more reviews, the more user will feel comfortable investing their time in developing particular habits. Because it takes time. It's on average 66 days. OK, this is the result of my Kenya analysis. So now I have a rough understanding what would be built in MVP. But it's not actual MVP yet. It's just it's a good start of structuring the whole pool of features that you have. OK, what is MVP? I wouldn't read that because you would read. I think the most important thing to remember for today, if you want, is MVP is there for you to gain the validated learning. It's not just a minimal set of features that you can build or you can afford building or you think is worthwhile building. It's something that would allow you to learn. With MVP approach, you're making small bets consistently. And after every bet, you get feedback. You get validated learning from the customer. And you adjust your next small bet. As opposed to going all in, and then with time and money and resources, and then put it out there in the market and see what happens. And that's the main idea of the MVP. And this is pretty much illustrates the concept. On the depiction below, you can see that on every stage of the deployment, person can gain validated learning. It's usable. And that's the key difference. So this is minimal, but this is usable. And you could get validated learning and learn from people. OK, those are 3 takeaways about minimum viable product here. Build something small. Well, I have an example. Question?
Fail as quickly as possible.
Oh, yes, I will explain that one. Yeah, yes. That's a really important one, actually. Build something small. I have a friend who is building Android, iOS, and a web platform at once. And this is his first idea. He has money to build it, but he builds everything. And he doesn't really go and talk about it. He's confident that he would use the product, and he builds the whole thing like this. And it would be interesting. He spent a year and a half on this. It would be interesting to see him fail. Because, yeah. Because you build everything, all the platforms, and it's a lot of resources. You never built the product before, and then market haven't seen this before. And he had no idea what's going to happen. I've noticed if you build something and it's your idea, and you spend your money and your time as well, you feel like you want to protect the idea. And then you argue with people who is against it, and then you're really like scared pretty much to put it out there on the market and see how people would tear it apart, how people won't use it. But that's the thing. When you release the product, it's just a start. It's just a start. It will be changed like 70% from now, pretty much. That's why I'm excited to release the app and see how it's going to be torn apart. Fail as quickly. That's why fail as quickly as possible. If you procrastinate and you spend building the product 2 years, a lot of things can change. And you don't track the feedback. And you don't understand how they would interact with that. Pretty much, if you don't communicate with the user and release something, it's going to be a disaster. And pretty much, at Stanford course, I guess, they gave interesting example about failing as quickly as possible. The guy once gave a task in early 50s last century. He said, build the plane who can cross the river or something. And then a lot of people, they started building it because he promised a ton of money, like a huge ton of money. And people were failing, but it took them 1 year or 2 years to create a prototype. And then they had all these physicians and mathematicians to calculate everything and try to experiment with different materials for the planes. And it didn't work. But then one guy, he just figured out how he can iterate more quickly. And he could try let's say, 8 different ideas within a year, while his competitors, they could try just one. But they were more thorough with research and everything, but the actual experience was much less. And that's why this guy who could iterate more, he ended up winning and getting a lot of money. So that's the story behind this fail as quickly as possible. And number 3 is it's important and essential to create the visibility for user interaction patterns. Well, once you get it up there, you want to know what's actually going on, how people use it, and what patterns are. And we have a ton of different tools that we can use, and you can track everything pretty much. Like how they click the button, when they come back, how much time they spend on every screen, and sometimes you can track where they look. It's a lot of things. So my point is here, once you release it, you need to make sure that you have a visibility, that you can understand what's actually happening. Okay, also I want to go through 3 interesting stories with you. One is Groupon. So everybody heard of Groupon, I guess. And I want to give you a better idea how they started and how it was for them from the very beginning, because it's much more difficult than you imagine. Let's say I wanted to release my product in October, still under review today. And it's normal because you have to adjust your expectations, and a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can go wrong. Groupon, they started as a simple website. It was called The Point. And they had $1 million for this website. So they had some money. It was nice. It was 2007. And on this The Point website, they had a lot of different campaigns from different companies. And one of the problems was with the campaigns, they were really, really different in terms of delivering the value to the customers. And after a year, so they were gathering every week and talking about the website, and they've noticed that nothing really happening. The traction that they were getting was really weak, and they couldn't really get it off the ground. It took them 1 year to realize that, and they started to scrutinize the website and understand what's actually happening and what they can try to do different. And over time, so they've noticed there was some concept, the more people you get on the deal, the higher the chance that you can get a group discount. And they liked the concept, and they were debating a little bit, but they decided to build a separate website, and they called it Groupon. Another thing that they changed, instead of having 100 deals on the website, they just put one deal per day, and they handpicked it, the deal. Company didn't post anything, with just one deal of the day, and that was it, pretty much. And another thing that they've noticed, they looked at the competitors. They had Amazon, Walmart. Those are gigantic companies, and they can afford selling stuff for cheap, pretty much, and they couldn't compete with them. That's why they decided to focus on the local deals that Amazon and Walmart, they wouldn't be able to find anywhere, pretty much. So they were handpicking local deals and putting just one deal a day. And then also they started going after local customers because it's a local deal as well. Like one of the first deals that they had was they went around the office building where they had an office, and they said, would you sign up? We have a deal, and this pizza downstairs on the first floor, it's 50% off if you sign up and we get enough people. And they had 500 signups this day. And they started going small, but it was working, right? There's a saying, it's called nail it before you scale. And they just came back to figure out what was wrong. And also, it was a simple website, nothing, no platform, no anything. It was a WordPress website with one deal, and they had an email. That's all. Like if you want to get a t-shirt from them, like a part of the deal, and you want to figure out the size, you would have to email them. This is how it was working. And they would send you a PDF coupon. It was ugly, but it was working. And they spent the minimum amount of efforts on that. And also, after a year, they had 300 employees. After another year, they had 5,000 employees. pretty much. They got a really solid understanding. They got a concept that worked for them at this particular area where they started. And from there, pretty much they started their expansion. Another good learning about Groupon is that they were really heavy on emails. They made a decision that if you go to the website, they wouldn't show you the deal unless you submit your email. Because they figured when you go and see the website for the first time, the chances are that is not the deal you're interested in. They're pretty high. However, maybe next day, you'll get a deal that you're interested in. And they shifted their value proposition from having the deals on the website that you can see. They say, OK, you're going to receive the best deal on your email every day. And with this idea, they pretty much took off. This is one story. Another story. This is my favorite one. Those are all fun stories. Tinder. They had really complicated market when they started because the way people used all these services, it was different. Let's say OkCupid with 50 million users, right? There was a great book, actually, Dataclysm. And 50 million users, you have competitor, and people, they fill out this huge, long profile, and they answer hundreds of questions to get a better match, and all these pictures they put over there. And it takes them a lot of time, but there are still a lot of problems with spamming, and those are problems I highlighted before with the dating services. So what Tinder did, they started small. They started in LA, and it was a really, really simple app. Swipe left, swipe right. Pretty easy, but it was a different concept, right? Nobody had it before, and now people just, they're replicating it. Like my friend is creating an app. It's like LinkedIn. You hire people, but you swipe left and swipe right. And it works. He has interest from investors, right? Because for people, it's a gamified experience, right? After a year, they got like multiple billion swipes. After a year, they got 13 million daily users. And also, the way they got their first users, I like these companies because they get creative. There was a question about user acquisition, right? Tough question. Like, I have a marketing plan like this. And I was talking to an investor, and he said, what do you have different? All of your competitors, they use all these channels, and they track everything. They're trying to get an understanding of what is cheaper for them, right? How do you get cheaper customer, but good customer, right? So you have different metrics to evaluate different customers from different channels, and also you track the cost of acquisition as well. And this is something that I couldn't say much. But these guys, they started they had an understanding they'd rather have 100 people in one place who use the app than having 5,000 people in different cities use the app, because it doesn't make sense, right? And they started throwing the parties at universities or somewhere close. Really fancy parties, a lot of money spent, but when you go to the party, you have to sign up Tinder. You have to download the app. You have to use it. And then there was a lot of word of mouth, and people liked it naturally. So 3 different things. They focused on local universities, different parties, and the app was really that simple. It was an MVP for them. And it didn't change that much, but however, they added a few features, a few restrictions that we discussed before. But restrictions work for them, but some companies believe it's not worth it. But still, it's an interesting way of getting new users. Once you build your idea, you need to understand where the most of your users are. Let's say now a problem I'm trying to solve. I found a blog with 400,000 users, and blog is about habits. And now I'm trying to understand how do I get those users using the app. And this is a different type of problem to solve. Airbnb. That's a nice story here as well, and quite shady at times if you deep dive into this. It started really small. Again, all these stories I connected with this idea, starting local, starting small, starting with something that can prove the value. Pretty much, some of you read the story, some part of it at least. A couple of designers, they just didn't have money. They decided to rent out a few airbags in their apartment here in San Francisco. And there was some designer conference coming up. So pretty much, instead of going to Craigslist, Because have you seen Craigslist? Yeah? And have you seen the difference in the Craigslist design from 2008 to 2015? It's the same. They don't change anything in design. So some people are sick of it in terms of experience, and they were designers, so for them was like, we wouldn't use it. And they decided to build a website pretty quickly. And they put their listing on there, and they hosted like 3 or 4 designers, and within a week they made $1,000. So that was a market validation for them, sort of really small, but still a validation. And after that, they started developing this website more and more, but they had a problem with only friends pretty much using them. And it's hard to grow, right? You need to find a whole ton of people to list their houses and all the pictures on their website on the one hand, and on the other hand, you pretty much need to find people who need it. It's pretty much creating the marketplace, which is really difficult. And what they did, they looked at the listings that they had, looked at the pictures, and the pictures were so ugly, so there's no way they would book it. And they started providing this. So some of the founders, I think they went to New York, and they started taking pictures of some of the listings to figure out if their hypothesis was true. And after that, when they changed the pictures, those listings had a higher chance that they would be booked. And then they started providing pretty much photography services. Once you start listing your apartment, they can say, we can have a professional photographer coming over, and he can take professional pictures of your place so that you have higher chance of success, right? Sounds good. Sounds good deal, and that's why it worked. And with Airbnb, there was an interesting story around Craigslist. So you probably know, just talking about Craigslist as an idea and the user base, people pretty much list their properties over there, and they rent it out, they sublet it, and it still exists. It's a good experience. And actually now if you paste a link for Airbnb on the Craigslist post, they would say there's going to be validation for that. They would say don't post the link on the they wouldn't allow it. That's pretty much interesting part of the story. So what they did, allegedly, they don't say they publicly did it. Pretty much, some guy was trying to reverse engineer and trying to understand. He was trying to understand the story behind the growth of the company. And what he did, he harvested some of the emails for Craigslist, and he had like 5,000 emails. And then he created a simple website with the house listings. And then he put a few house listings on Craigslist, and he started receiving emails from Airbnb. And pretty much in these emails, it was looking like just a personal email. Some random person recommends you to try Airbnb because in your particular city, Airbnb is getting like 3 million clicks, or 3 million users. And this is something that has proven to be a very interesting impact on the success story of this company. When it was still struggling to get more users and to get their website up and running and to create a marketplace. But it worked. So some of the takeaways from this story. They started small, started local again. They had some struggles, but they scrutinized the experience and they got an understanding and they checked all the hypotheses that they have and they found something that worked. And they just started doing it. It's a simple formula. But they had struggles as well. It took them a lot of time to actually become somebody. Okay, and this is the last slide, I promise, of this presentation, because it's too many slides today, right? I wanted to point out that when you create something, it's more important to have the right questions unanswered than right answers to the wrong questions. It makes sense. And I believe these are the right questions to ask, and it's called Product Canvas. Some guy came up with it I think it's in pragmatic marketing. So some of the questions I would like to introduce you and give you an idea how I pretty much answered them for Habit Loop Idea. So 1, understand the customer segment. For whom are we solving the problem? And for whom are we creating the value and what the value is? Pretty much people like me, because it was my personal problem. And I was like, I need something to develop the habit, let's say the habit of running, so that I can outrun this 100-year-old guy, right? And people like me, let's say 20 to 30 years old, career-oriented mostly, who care about their performance, care about their success, and it all boils down to the lifestyle. And that they would be interested in investing their curiosity and time into developing themselves, right? Early adopters, who's potential early user of the solution? Realistically, those people are my friends pretty much, because they're similar to me. And I have about like 200 likes on Facebook right now, mostly friends. And they would use it first. And also, I have a group of people. Test flight was mentioned here. And I have a group of people, 20 people pretty much. And they already using the prototype of the app, which is essentially similar to the one that is being approved at the moment. So test flight is really interesting tool that you can use for so-called soft launch. And it would allow you to pretty much send your app to up to 2,000 users, pretty much. If you have so many users, you can try, without actually risking the reputation, putting a lot of money into marketing, and then it would turn out that the app doesn't work. So that's why it's called soft launch. Okay, the problem. What are the top 3-5 problems faced by target customers? So my problem, yeah, as you probably know, it's still a problem. Like I run 4 times a week right now, but it's still a problem. I haven't run a marathon yet. It takes time. Pretty much achieving the long-term goals that require long-term commitment. And long-term commitment, it's not based on some visual motivation or peer pressure, or something like what we normally do. Let's say how I approached it before. I told all my friends that I'm going to run a marathon. And then I learned about the proper techniques to run. And then I even scheduled a marathon. So I had all this, and I was visualizing some of the pictures when I was running. It was a beautiful landscape. And it all didn't work. Like after 2 months, I was like done. I couldn't run any longer. Like I started coming up with excuses, and it was too long, and it didn't work. Those are the problems, I think, that I'm facing. And another problem that I want to highlight here for this particular app, I found that 45% of Americans, they set New Year's resolutions in 2015. And then it's like, what is it, 145 million. And then only 8% of them could achieve them. So that means 92% of Americans, roughly 130 million Americans, they couldn't achieve long-term goals, right? That's why it's not only my problem. I think it's a problem of a lot of people. And actually, on top of the resolution list, it's losing weight. And losing weight, it's a bunch of small habits about nutrition, about lifestyle, about physical activity. Pretty much it can be done with the app. Existing alternative, how are they solving the problem today? With this question, I pretty much revealed some of the competitors that they use. Mostly didn't work. Coach.me was pretty good. However, like when you use the coach, it's different price. It's like $15 a week minimum. It depends on the coach. And then if coach doesn't give you a habit of actually doing it, you will stop doing it. It will fail and spend a lot of money. Unique value proposition. A lot to it. It goes from competitors' research, and this is what makes the app unique. On one hand, pretty much I made an extensive research, and I outlined the most efficient steps that you can take in order like to lose the weight or to run. And then I tied them to the specifics of the methodology. And in terms of marketing and positioning, it's really important to say that, oh, okay, I have this thing that nobody else has. And nobody have the methodology. And nobody have people actually voting on the habits. Because if you finish the habit, you're successful, and you're happy about it, you can vote that it's a great habit, and you can leave a review and recommend to a friend, right? So that other people, when they look and see other habit lists and they make their decision about investing their personal time into this, they could see that their friend is happy about it, and they can choose it. So those are all differences that I have, and this is what I call unique value proposition. Channels. This is a big question of a separate lecture, I guess. I have a lot of different channels that I use to acquire users. And then the retention problem is a bigger problem, and it goes into play later, pretty much. And when you think about channels, it's really useful to think about what product lifecycle development you're on. Either building, launching, or the market is saturated already, like a lot of users. Then when it comes into play, retention problem. So in terms of channels, I should just say that you should try everything, measure it, and see what works best. Because I'm trying Twitter, Facebook, Quora, Redis, different articles on Medium, then TechCrunch, and then some of the PR tools that can be used. There's a lot of them. And I use YouTube channel as well. I create a couple of videos. It works well. So there's like a gazillion of things that you can try. But give them a try, at least the most popular ones, and figure out what's the minimal cost for you, for the user, and which channel gives you the best user. By best user, I mean you have to define it for yourself. Let's say, for me, the best user would be the guy who goes to an app and then adds the habit and happy about it and developed it successfully and then shares with the friends and then buys the paid version of it. That's the best guy, right? And I would be tracking every single guy from different channels and seeing how good they were. And then I'll just figure out what's the best balance for different channels. Okay, I have to wrap this up and leave it to questions, but just really quickly. So the solution is pretty much the app, and why it's that way, I think we covered most of it. Key stakeholders, it's mostly applicable for people who work in a company or who work with different founders or who work with investors. Key success factors, well, I think my key success factor is there are different metrics that you can use, and they're different stages, right? Let's say at the beginning it would be amount of downloads, would be a good success factor. But another metric that I would recommend to track for every product consistently is NPS. It's called Net Promoter Score. You ask one question, and you ask just if your user is willing to recommend your product to a friend. And it's a scale type of question from 1 to 10. And key resources and partners. So this is like a separate topic, I guess. What kind of resources you need and how do you get them. And I would be willing to share my experience, I guess, later on this topic, but it's like separate. OK, we ran out of time, and I hope somebody have a question and that you guys enjoyed the presentation overall.
Thanks for that great presentation. I think it really hits home to hear a real-life experience. Kind of, because you went pretty deep here, I just want to pull it back to the very, very beginning, the impetus behind your new app and your new venture. I believe you mentioned on several times that it was born out of your quest to complete a marathon, right? And then going back to Alex's presentation earlier, could you describe kind of your initial startup process in terms of how much money you put into it, time, energy? Were you working full-time, part-time at the time? Did you outsource? Did you code yourself? And kind of, that initial experience, because it seems like you're kind of already down the pike a little bit with where you're at, and congratulations for that. But I think a lot of us would like to hear kind of how it all kind of started for you and how you bring, looking back on that part of the experience. Thanks.
OK. So I ended my job in July, pretty much, as a product manager because it was too much. And if you have a chance to do that, do that. Because if you want to try to have it all, it would take a lot of time. And I started thinking about the idea end of August. And then I started drafting out the prototype. And then I created a prototype pretty quickly with an app. It's called Axure. It's similar to Proto.io, but I think Pro.io is a bit more flexible. But OK, I built it in 3 weeks, pretty much. I was a bit relaxed because it was in Hawaii, so it was difficult to focus. Then I conducted some of the interviews. It's been 18 or 20 different people. And pretty much I was trying to understand and gauge how they interact with the prototype. And then normally friends of friends who doesn't know me. And I gave my friends certain criteria that I'm looking for. And then I had a brainstorm as well, and I had some of the adjustments for the prototype from my interviews, and a brainstorm for more features, and then I conducted kind of analysis with a lot more people using Google Forms, mostly. And after that, I had a pretty good idea of what kind of features I need, and I dig deeper into the methodology, and I started getting an understanding how visually it would look like. And I had high fidelity prototype. You can click around everywhere pretty much. And I had an understanding who I need to find. I started asking friends for resources first because they might provide some more reliable recommendations, because most of my friends, they're founders, developers, and IT people. And normally people are busy pretty much. And if you worry that people would steal your idea, it's not true. People who can't steal your idea, they're working on something else already, and they have 10 other ideas. And I went to Upwork first, and found designer after a month, and in parallel, I was looking for a developer too. What matters the most at the beginning is design, how you want to see it. But at the same time, I would recommend to look for a developer, because it took me 6 weeks to find a developer, and I had reviewed 30 candidates from Upwork. I had 4 different rounds of interviews. And let's say after the first round, only 14 left. And then I had a conversation over the phone with each of them, some of the teams and some of the individual developers. After that, I followed up with 15 questions each. And I had the criteria sets for each developer. Let's say the price, the responsiveness, and everything. It was like the whole system. Then 5 people made it to the 3rd round, and in the 3rd round, I asked them to provide the sample code that they have so that I can take a look. And I also had a really, really techie friend who helped me to take a look at the code. So for some of the codes, he couldn't stop laughing, but I was really considering to hire the guy. And so we ended up having just 2 candidates, and then we had a technical conversation with those 2 candidates, agencies, pretty much. And I hired just 1. And then it was some back and forth. We had a roadmap, milestones. I had an advantage because I knew all the process for the software development, given experience. And pretty much over time, we agreed on the price. I wrote a 20-page spec on that. I decided not to build a small like screen by screen, and decided to build the whole thing quickly. And it took developer 160 hours. In terms of money, it cost about $9,000, personal money, pretty much. And it's cheap because I found developers, one in Russia and one in Ukraine, and they have lower rates. And also I had everything ready. Pretty much there was much less back and forth because I knew exactly what I needed at this point. And I had a good idea how to work with them. So I hope that answers your question.
How much are you going to charge for the app?
Okay. Sorry. But yeah, I can answer that really quickly. I'll start with $3.99, as most of my competitors. I have a couple of benchmark numbers. One is, on average, for the productivity category, people are willing to pay $5.99. 80% of my competitors, they're from $3.99 to like $5.99, this range. And I'll be experimenting, pretty much. And also I had an idea to build by habit category, but it's a lot of experimentation mostly.
What specific tools would you recommend for tracking user interaction with the apps?
Okay. I've done a little research on that recently. I will be using personally Google Analytics and Flurry. Those are 2 tools that would be way enough for you to track everything. There's one is called Mixpanel, but it's a bit more difficult a bit more time consuming for developers to implement, and a bit more hardcore than you need from the very beginning.
Thank you.
So you mentioned about the analytics tool to track your performance or consumer experience.
Yeah.
Have you used any other analytical tools to compare what is better
Like just, I have done just some research. I didn't have to use many of them that much. Yeah. Ah.
Repeat the question.
Microphone. Ah, okay. Sorry.
I remember you mentioned about the analytical tools that you use for the Googles, and I'm wondering if you ever compare or use the other analytical tools to track your performance or other type of work task.
Okay. So I would recommend, once again, similar question. I would recommend Flurry and Google Analytics. I haven't used many more of them. It's a lot of them. And I think that would suffice for pretty much what I want to see, because when you try to implement one of the analytical tools, you need to identify the events and behavior you want to track on each screen of the app. And that's an interesting exercise, but pretty much most of them, they can cover all these insights that you are curious about at the initial stage.
Roman, I just wanted to add on that same question. You guys are probably familiar with this app service. It's called App Annie.
Yes.
That's an analytic tool specifically for apps, I believe, right? And I think it's used a lot for market research. So if you think you have an idea and it's like, the latest and greatest idea, you can kind of type in the keywords for what your idea is, and then it'll show all the apps in the iOS and Android Google Play landscape that are similar, matching to that. And so I was looking at your competitive analysis, and I just remembered that was a pretty good resource.
Yeah, thanks for your insight. I think it's a great resource, especially if you want to figure out how many downloads your competitors had, and this is the number you want to be curious about. You would use App Annie for that. In terms of surfacing keywords, those are keywords you would need to identify them when you give the details for your app within the App Store. There are a bunch of other tools that are free, and App Annie, it's a paid thing. Any other questions?
What's your next biggest hurdle?
That's a good question. Great question. To be honest,
I said, what's his next biggest hurdle?
Next biggest hurdle with this idea. I think that would be really interesting to see how people start using it, and to generate different hypotheses and test them. And it's going to be a lot of work. As I said, when you launch the product, the work is just starts. Don't have this idea that you have to iterate quicker than the others. That's you have a higher chance of success here.
So this is a tough question. So
Yeah.
how many apps are you selling per month now?
How many apps?
You have downloads, right? You're
Yeah.
selling it?
Yeah, I'm just launching it. It's under review.
Is what?
It's under review, the app right now.
Okay, so it's
But-
not long.
Yeah, I'll update you in a couple of months. Any other questions, comments?
Any more questions for Roman?
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about B2B apps that don't charge and are given away for free, and how they're monetized on the back end because the company is giving away that for free and then creating some other subscription way to pay for it? Like a lot of insurance companies, people are giving away that for free and then somehow getting you to sign up somewhere else to pay for it, and how that works.
Okay, so B2B world is really different. I was working on a couple of SaaS platform, and when I said don't make your product free, it applies first and foremost for consumer apps, right? With B2B, it's really hard to get customers, especially if it's enterprise customers. If you get one really big one, your salespeople, they would bend over backwards in order to get them sign up even for free pilot. And they have different models of sales. Let's say you have a pilot 3 months for free, and only after that you start billing the client. But once you start billing the client, and normally it's tied to % of spend or something like this, or pretty much on scale of the optimization, you will get your money back.
So another question is about regulations. I mean, have you experienced with any startups or cases, that people are failing or being successful dealing with the regulations. Like example, Uber, right, still struggling with the regulations to implement their business model, in many countries. And now I was thinking not ideas, but I was thinking about some ideas. Like, wait a minute, their regulations will be huge battlefield, to move forward. So any case besides Ubers that you see, share with us,
Yeah, sure. Airbnb, they had a lot of problems as well. And big companies, those are huge giants that deal with people, they would inevitably have these problems. However, I found myself, when I think about idea and creating something, you would start wondering what would happen. And you go really, really far. And you come up with a whole 100 of problems that you are about to encounter. So I wouldn't recommend that. And I would recommend to solve one problem at a time once you actually have it. But yes, the bigger your company is, the more possibility that you can face those legal things.
All right, any more questions for Roman? All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. So see you guys back in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, guys.